Wish you were one of those influencers with raving fans who binge on your every word, consume all your content, buy everything you have to sell, and demand even more? Then stay tuned while Authority Magazine columnist and BuzzFeed contributor Tracy Hazzard shares strategies, tips, and tactics from top videocasters, podcasters, authors, and social influencers on creating that bingeable factor. Now, let's join Tracy as she explores how to rise above all the digital noise with the binge factor.
AJ, so glad to have you here. And, I love that you call your podcast a masterclass in itself. I think that's really brilliant. But, I'm sure you tossed around a lot of names for the show. What made you dial in and want to call it the KJ Masterclass Live?
That's a good question, Tracy. And it has a lot of meaning to this particular word. So even though it may sound like a small format or abbreviation of my own name, but that is only a very small reason. In India, and especially in Eastern India, KAJ or KAJ is another word for work in Hindi or in several regional languages. And when this masterclass idea came in, so it's about a lot of, these masters who come to the show. They bring so much of information, insights, mostly with regards to work and people in different forms of work, the way they are doing, either in business, even in workplaces, even in big business. So it works well for everybody. So that was that synergy. And the other reason was that being from a news agency background and is in India, first, so I work with Reuters, and an Indian news agency, the Press Trust of India, the biggest news agency that we have. They all use initials. You hardly use bylines. So when you transmit a copy, your initials will tell people within the system who has edited this copy or who has finally seen this copy. So my initial, because of my name, was KAJ. So it reminds a lot of those people who have worked with me in PTI about this name. So I thought, why not put all these things together and make it much more useful in terms of meaning for myself, as well as meaning in terms of work for a lot of people who understand.
It sounds cool, right? And meaning with your audience, that is your early adopters, right? The people who already have been following you in the news and following your articles and following the way that you are, they're your first early adopters. So they're the ones who know you. And so there's a synergy to that. I do love that. And I love that that's a play on words for you. And that makes it so interesting to, am I really going to get work in here? I'm starting to understand that. And it's wonderful to kind of have that multi-level title to it. And so that's really working for you. I've been on your show already. So that's kind of fun that I already have that experience of being on your show. And one of the major things that I think is so exciting about your show is this energy level you bring. Do you think that you would have this kind of high energy level if it wasn't live, if you didn't have that live interaction, if you were just recording it?
Let me put it this way. I look at live shows as living a full life in those 30 minutes, 35 minutes, or 40 minutes. You live a life. And when you live a life, and in real time, it's full of zest. Anybody you look at, he or she should look at it that way. So when I do that live, I don't plan it like that. I am just like that. But when you are doing that live, it's not about me. It's about, I forget that I exist. I always look at, this is what I've learned. This is the way I am. It's not that I'm trying anything extra. And that's why it becomes so easy for me. I look at only the guest. And why the guest? Because guest is the expert, he or she is the master. And he or she is bringing that value to the audience. Today, live, tomorrow, recorded, and in different formats. Either it's in audio, video, text. I would want to take it to many more places if I could, but I'm just one man and a couple of, my wife helps me and a couple of other people, but mostly it's
right.
not.
We're all like a one-man show in podcasting so often, right? And we have a few hidden people behind us, thank goodness, right? Your show has this energy about it. And I'm going to dive right into the binge factor right now because I want the audience to hear that. I want the binge factor to the KJ show is just so powerfully energetic. Like it is yes. Energy at a level that is, it's hyped up and wonderful. And I think what it is it's infectious. And to have an energy that's infectious and powerful.
When I started, Tracy, I did not know that the guests are seeing it that way. Because
they are. For me, we're feeding off of it.
Yes, for me, it was very natural way of being like this. But when I am doing that, say 30 second, 40 second of coming live from this, again, it's not about me. In journalism, you have something called dateline. So I'm just telling people where the guest is. And, in every news or any story, it's the first few lines that is most important. Your intro and the guest your audience should know what is coming up for them. So if you tell them that the guest, even it's very natural and it's very obvious, but when they listen to the same thing, it becomes something important for them and they wait. And that is the time. Even guests are very happy to listen. Perhaps, they become part of the show when I tell them that coming live from New York or coming live from, Costa Rica or any other place, and they suddenly feel much more connected that it's about me. And in those 20 seconds, you have it with them, not just the guest, but also the audience. And not only for that time, but for later on. I'm lucky that way.
Yeah, you really are, because that high energy level, it's infectious to the guest, it's infectious to the audience. And what it does is it gets this more embracing mood that you're in as a listener, and you're just sitting there and enraptured with the idea of what's going to happen, who's going to talk next, and what's the question going to be. And it just has this engagement level because of that infectious energy you bring to it. And I think that's really what makes your show so bingeable. It makes me want to go back and listen, even though I didn't get to listen to that one live. But more importantly, it does make me want to find out when you are live and join you live. And I think that's really a critical path that a lot of podcasters don't have dialed in. They don't know how to get someone to show up when they are live, when they are doing something where they can take questions or be engaging. They don't know how to do that, and you do.
The good part is that I want to share something for the podcasting community or podcasters, is that because there is enough engagement in terms of audience and the guests are also willing to share it much more enthusiastically. And I am getting quite a number of queries without actually thinking of monetization in terms of advertisers, in terms of other stuff. But actually what is happening is podcast agencies, PR companies from outside, from India, and now companies have started approaching me for collaborations and tie-up. Like tomorrow, there is a big tie-up with an artificial intelligence company, which is talking about nutrition and all that stuff, and will be live 7:30 p.m. India time, and I guess 10 EDT tomorrow for them. So for me, it is again, and the only thing that I notice is that today also I got again from some artificial intelligence companies, from speech to text or text to speech tool. So they talked about the presentation style. They talked about the thing about, I'll tell you what, I've been in television background. I've trained, but I have not been trained as an anchor or presenter. I was always, as you say, being in the news agency background in that field, we are trained to work within the shadows. Rarely get bylines in news agencies. Some of them you get. And then even on television side, in CNBC, I was the assignment editor. So my job was to make sure that the show was running. Everything is smooth. The systems are running. You are interacting, talking to all the reporters across the country and outside. So I did not have a formal test of this anchoring, but I always thought how I deal with normal people when I talk with my friends or how we are talking. Why to have pretensions when you are talking online also? Because, and I'll tell you, it's around 12 o'clock midnight here in India.
Right.
Why should it be different if I'm talking to Tracy and I like talking to her? Then it should be like you are talking in real life. Right. And the biggest thing is that you have got a thing called podcasting. You've got the tools. And it is not bound by few minutes here and there. Why not utilize those tools to be more human? Utilize those tools to reach people and connect with them. That is what podcasting is all about.
It is. It's about connection, right? Yeah. And, so you were just mentioning this, and that's just one of my questions that I have for you is that you came from behind the scenes in sort of this newsroom model. And what did you find as the biggest challenge coming to the other side of the mic, essentially?
I don't know if there was any challenge. In fact, you can say I'm one of the exceptions, but I'll tell you the reason behind is that I come from a very, very small place. I was born in a very small village, no electricity, nothing. And then there was a gradual sort, but I've been very lucky to meet a lot of good people in life. So even though there were my own share of problems, financial problems and every other problem, but I met a lot of good people. Because I felt that when you meet people with an open heart, you also get to meet a lot of good people. So it has been a gradual sort of, and especially in being in Delhi, it gave me a good exposure in terms of my social life. And in Delhi, I had that opportunity to be part of Students' Union and all that stuff. People elected me as the president of the college. So that gave me the chance to speak to students hundreds of times, all the time. That was the stepping stone for me, not in terms of politics, but actually connecting with people. And perhaps that is the most important reason that some understanding of journalism, but the real understanding of connecting with the people in front of you because today itself one guest was saying that you are here. And that's the most important thing. Now I can understand why she's saying that. And it's a privilege to meet those people and privilege that you can be yourself. So those are the type. Why I'm speaking this is that the biggest challenge podcasting will have in going days is that whether the guest and the host are able to connect the same way that they had actually set out. If that will be there is a future. If not, as you can see, the pod fade, the reason
it's high. You're right.
Yes, it will not just be for guests or hosts, but it will also be for guests.
Yes, you're very right there. That is a really good point, that you're going to have the guests find it less valuable, and then you're going to have fade from that side and value attrition as well. I think that there's something really interesting about the idea of your perspectives. And I'm pretty sure that if I asked you what one of the return on investments you find from your show, you would absolutely say that it was probably the fact that you get to reach so far out into the world, right? And bring perspectives in. But, was there anything about podcasting, about this, using this media type, that surprised you?
What has surprised me is why are a lot of hosts, as I said, the pod fade from the guest side should not set in, because that will be not good for the industry.
Yeah.
What has surprised me is in that aspect. The guest is not an expert. He's or she is an expert of the trade they are in. They are the expert of. But as a host, it is your responsibility to make it interesting. And what is interesting? Interesting is not just about talking. Interesting is the value.
Right.
You see, when earlier on people were talking for hours, then the sweet spot is 37 minutes. But actually, who will still wait for 37 minutes to get that value? When you talk of my show, I want them to feel that they are getting value from the moment it's about coming live.
Right.
Or even recorded. If they don't, then that person is gone. So why should you not give value? And why do you talk about, as somebody, I was hosting Adams from Grow Your Show. So he told me that, what I like about your show is that you don't beat around the bush. You don't talk about.
That's true.
Even though and I'm telling you not because I'm talking about myself, because I'm concerned about podcasting as an industry. It has only given me. I have not given it anything. I have only tried to use whatever I have learned as an editor, as all the journalism, as a human being, as a relationship man. Networking is not. I don't look at it things from to bring to that. So he said, you are not talking, and I, with due respect to all the people who have cats and dogs, but he said, you don't talk about their dogs and cats. Obviously, if I need to talk about that, I will talk. But if I spend 15 minutes talking about them, tell me, Tracy, who is interested in profiles of people today? You get those profiles on LinkedIn everywhere.
Right. Bios, right? That's what bios are for.
Right. If you bring the same thing in a video version or an audio version, do you think anybody would be interested in the long run?
No. I mean, this is the thing is that I find that the podcasts that have the most bingeability, the most long-term, really hit the nitty-gritty helpful things, the things that I do want to know. And I think that's where your journalistic background has been so helpful, because in news, you got to get to it very quickly. You got to get to the heart of the story. You got to make a human connection and get some useful takeaway, something I'm going to remember and tell, hey, on the news, I heard this, right? You want to remember it. And so that's where I think you have a benefit over a lot of other podcasters, where it takes some time to find that rhythm, to find that place that they're good at, that really is adding value.
Right. I don't look at them as other podcasters. I look at them as part of my community. I'll tell you, and I'm ready to share anything that I know. Why? Because it benefits me also. Firstly, if the quality of content goes better, you see the mainstream media. There is a different way things are happening. So where a lot of people who are coming to my show are a lot of journalist friends of mine. Most of my connections on LinkedIn, half of them are journalists, ex-journalists, public relations people, somewhere related to media, not only in India, but outside. And those are the people, a lot of people who are consuming podcasts are also people who are not looking at it purely as podcasts. They are looking at it in terms of content. Mm-hmm. Content that can add value to what they are wanting to achieve in life. And if they get that, so my motive is selfish, that if other podcasters are bringing better content and we together give the whole bunch of people who want to consume good content, it keeps the industry vibrant and thriving.
I agree. This is where you and I are totally aligned, because I so agree, AJ. Like, I think that if we raise everybody up, the whole industry is better. The listeners, will consume more because they're going to love it more.
Right. So through your show, I want to tell anybody who wants to seek my any sort of assistance, advice, or anything, just reach out to me. And I will try to do that. If anybody wants to speak, I'll speak. I will not charge anything.
I'm so glad you said that. That's so valuable. Well, let's talk about some of these little bit of nitty gritty things, AJ. Let's talk about it, because you and I met through Podmatch, which is a one-way to get guests. Have you found other ways at which you can go out and really reach for guests that are outside your community and bring new perspectives into your audience? How do you go about doing that?
Okay. As I said, see, I am a bit of a different sort of a podcaster because, as I said, my background in journalism gives me a huge, and not just journalism, my own personal network gives me that extra edge that I can get a lot of guests. And that is why I did not start with my guesting from India. I wanted to move into different territory, international territory where I did not know people. I could have gotten hundreds of people from here itself, from the network, either college network, journalism network. But then I would be starting with something very, very familiar. And you know, I wanted to try for something very different from, it's like to get some fresh perspectives of things, perspectives, ideas for the Indian audience. And those ideas also must go to the international audience, whoever finds it interesting. So I may not be the correct person to say where I can get the guests, because other people have their limitations. But I will tell you, there are so many ways you can reach out to. The whole idea is not about the designation of a guest. It does not matter. If you start looking at CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, or even the president of the United States, it does not matter if you do not have the right questions to ask.
So true.
Okay, and how do you get the right questions? To get the right questions, you got to understand who that person is. And not about that, oh, I struggled in my life, so I've reached here and that. That is not going to understand. You got to know how to ask questions that also challenges their mind to come out with something innovative, something different, where they are very proud of themselves that, listen, there was a question which actually made me chisel my own knowledge.
Right. Made me refine my message so that I could express it better and articulate it. I love that. That's a really interesting way to look at your relationship with your Q&A, your questions and answers, right? Like, and how you're doing that. And I can see how you do that in your show, because you really are actively listening and asking the next right question. I do see that your show flow has a very experienced questioning model.
Sorry. I'll tell you what, how do you research? I'll tell you an example. There are some guests. Now, I'm on Calendly. And most of my life is not on Calendly. So a lot of people find it open. It's not, obviously, I'm not going to put my whole life on Calendly. It's just to help me and help the guest. So several times I have seen that guests, in the morning, my time, they book for evening time or afternoon time. Now, I want to tell guests, if you want that sort of a host, don't go for it. In a practical situation, nobody will be able to do a research on you and ask you any questions, even if you feel that the slot is empty or the host is free.
You got to give time, right? You got to have time for that. Yeah. And that's such a good point.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Value yourself. And if you are getting a slot, does not mean jump for it. Because I tell you, you got to, the host must do that research. And research is not just about one pager. The questions has to flow in a manner that it tells a story. And that story cannot be told by you. That has to be told by the guest. So, how do you ensure that? That is the only, you can say, hard work that I do. And the biggest hard work is to put it on social media.
Right.
In fact, interviews are easy. The biggest difficult part is to put on the social media. And to add to this, even guests, I must tell you, you have told that you are an expert. But if I ask you, that tell me 5 points or 5 tips that you talk about, you have got only one. Then I've got to move out to another question.
Right.
But a lot of people are not from my background. So then again, they will move to the cat and dog. And again, you lose your audience.
Yes,
let that not happen. Yes, let that not happen. Tell your guest that you are an expert. And secondly, if your guest is saying that they are an expert, then you got to qualify it. They are saying, you tell to your audience that is there. That is why in my YouTube description, if I pick up some line, how do I know somebody who has, not everybody is truthful. They can pad up their profiles. People tell it during job processes also. So I write about particular person in his own words or in her own words. So you qualify that. Right. You are not saying it. You must do it. Or even there was somebody who was an expert, but he did not have an official qualification. So I asked bluntly, starting that, how do my audience listen to you? And before that, they should know that if they are listening to the right person, if they should trust, because this is important information. People may just get in their heads and they may just start following you. So if you are true to the information, see, even if you are a podcaster, you are still providing information through your guests.
Right.
And it is your duty to ensure that you are qualifying your guests, or any information that they are sharing. At least I may make mistakes, but I will still try and do as best as to make sure that I'm not making mistakes just because I'm being lazy.
Because you're being lazy. That's so true. I agree. I mean, we're not all of us in podcasting trained journalists, so we don't always have a process, but we do need to come to one that is vetting research, that at least does a minimum level of double check system, also to make sure it's going to be good content and a good story, as you put out before, right? As stated there. Well, let's talk a little bit about audience, because listener growth and other things are a big struggle for almost every podcaster out there. And you mentioned sort of that idea of making sure social media is happening and that is listener growth. But you have the unique ability to work within this growth in the India audience. And that's a really interesting model as well. What can you tell us about the Indian listeners and about what they're looking for and what you're sort of seeing on the growth side there? We'd love your perspective on that, because, I mean, when do I get to talk to someone who's uniquely suited to have some expertise in this area?
Okay. See, when you are talking of audience, any audience that comes to listen to you or watches your video or anything are coming for two things: either entertainment or information, and information that helps them, information that they can use. It's like Google. If you are looking for a search of something, you want that answer immediately and at the top. That's why Google is working on those snippets, so that you immediately get. That's the whole challenge for Google. That's the way they're trying to refine it as much as possible. It's the same about podcasts. Why? Otherwise, people will not have the time as you go by. They are also looking at value for themselves. And that is what Indian audience is also not very different in that respect. In fact, Indian audience is looking for more value. There is a huge workforce. They want to understand which are the sectors which are going to be, doing good for them to try for jobs. They are also looking at what's happening at workplaces. What are the best practices outside? So everybody is looking for something for themselves. Even if you take from in terms of cryptos, people are looking at what is happening in the world, because in India we have, our government has made tax these things to a great extent, and it's still not official. We don't give legitimacy to cryptos and all, but people want to know about this. Now it is the responsibility of people who are giving information that they give undiluted information. I did not know about cryptos. I started talking. Now I understand a bit. But if somebody tells me, listen, you tell about something which is good or bad, I will not, because I'm not a qualified person. So if some guest talks about it, then I will tell them that, listen, this is what the guest is saying. I'm not saying anything. Why should I endorse anything without being an expert about it?
And and there are people out there who do go down that route of their whole monetization model is constant endorsement. And I think as an audience member, as a concerted listener, you know the difference. You know the difference between someone who's hawking anything and someone who's presenting you great information for you to make a decision. It's different.
You're right. And Tracy, they got to declare it.
Yeah.
Because people are making investment decisions, financial decisions based on that. In any other field, in any other product, you've got to tell. See, as I said, when people approach me for podcasting and all, I will never do anything which takes away my right to ask questions.
I agree with that.
Right. I will not. Not that I am an investigative journalist right now. No. I'm not doing that. I'm not here to sitting on judgment on anybody. But still, when I am talking to you, I don't have anything on my head. We are just talking. In the same way, when I'm talking to a guest, I want to talk to the guest.
Right.
But if suppose, but I have to also got to earn money. Now, I'm not an influencer. I'm not looking at advertising or Google ads and all that stuff. That's not going to work. It's peanuts. If you start depending on that, it means you are walking the wrong path.
I so agree. Like there is that, I'm going to call it the influencer advertising model of podcasting. And then there's the informational promotional model, which is a little bit different, right? And you're not running that fine line on it either. You're made a decision that you're not going to sell out your audience for small dollar amounts. You want to have the integrity of that.
Yes. Now the thin line that I need to walk is still, how do I monetize? And I'm not monetizing. That's where I was talking about the ebooks. That is the valid way you can do. But I'll tell you what. So
just because we talked about that before. So AJ was talking to me about that, some of the ideas that he has for future monetization, which is my next question, because this is the third set of questions that we usually ask about alternative forms of monetization, what your monetization plans might be, and where you see the value going. One of the areas that you want to explore next is ebooks. And I think that's a really interesting model for you, because that compilation model, especially as you get towards so many shows in your catalog, the idea of being able to group them together and make them easier to consume is a really nice model.
Yeah. And I'm not looking purely from just the monetization part of it. Right now, all I put my content is that you go to Instagram also, to Facebook, to Twitter, to YouTube, and all other places. I also put it on Medium. And then I also put it on Substack. What for? I put the video, I put that whole stuff. And I do it for two things. One is that it is there. It helps in SEO.
Yes.
And you don't need to learn SEO here. So anybody types, it will pop up. And this way, it has created around 150 to 200 interviews just on Medium and Substack out of nowhere. I wish I could use that whole transcript down there. But then again, I don't have that much of bandwidth. All that transcript I need to go through.
Well, we're going to have to talk about that, right? So that I can support you on that side.
To the ebooks
right?
part, ebooks, yes. So ebooks gives that opportunity.
Yeah.
It takes the content to a fresh level, and all that expertise that the guest has given, that actually, gets scanned and people can use it for a long, long time. And you don't go and sell it for a very high level of money. You just make it affordable, if possible, free. But people because I can give it, say, at an affordable rate, but people who would be doing all that work, they also need to earn money, because they need to get permissions from all the people who have appeared on your podcast. In Indian guests again agree, but internationally, you still want to make sure those who have appeared on you, that if they don't have any problems and all that stuff, because you don't want anybody to feel aggrieved later on. That is,
and you certainly do want to double screen it, right? Because that's also another opportunity. Things happen in businesses. And even though you may have loved this great interview that you did and it's doing really well in your podcast, that person's business no longer exists, or the story has really shifted over time. So you do have to do a second level of screening. And that's a really, really important point that you're making, AJ, is that you do a second set of vetting and a second confirmation on the fact that they're in on this.
Yes. That's very important. And once you take their consent, it means they have also given that consent that whatever they have spoken in that particular video or audio, it means it is them, and they have given consent for you to use that part for transcription and anything else, and using of ebooks.
I love it. So last question before we head out here. And I really wanted to dive into a little bit, because your show is, as you were mentioning before, this play on work. So how has your work changed and grown because of adding podcast into your content mix?
Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you how I started podcasting, and it's not a long story. In 2020, I was already, as I said, an independent journalist. You are advising people, advising companies if they're coming to you. I have a very active social life. As I said, a lot of people from my hometown in Delhi here. Then I have studied here in Delhi College. I've done my journalism here. So a lot of people already know you. Then one of my close friends, one day he asked me during COVID that he's also from Delhi University and from my hometown. He said, listen, Ajay, a lot of people know us in real life. But then, is it serving enough purpose for us to keep employed or earning throughout our lives? Because even if those people know us, they are not from our line of work. So for that, how is online considering our existence? Do they know us? And then it actually struck me. And then I thought, yes, it is very important that people, even if they know you offline, does online world recognize you? And that was one of the things that set me thinking. So I launched the KAJ Masterclass in 2021, though I started a bit of podcasting in July 2020. But that was just, solo, just trying out, just to understand things, how it was going and all. With a lot of other work you were already involved in. And then I saw that huge shift happening. People did not know that time Substack was taking off. Medium was coming in. And I was talking to a lot of people in the PR industry, in the media industry. A lot of people had not even heard those names. Several of them do not know now. Medium maybe, but not Substack. Now they know.
Right.
And when I saw that shift, I told this whole industry is going towards a direction where everything is moving towards subscriber-based content and not towards advertiser-based content, like newspapers and all, because that's, if you have no advertisers, newspapers will cost a lot of money to buy.
Right.
And that was the time I actually thought, why not go with that? So I have got an old 2021, last year, I made that small promo. With that, I launched the KAJ Masterclass, that the time for old world content is gone and you must start looking. And then I started working on that. I did a few interviews. And by that time, I was very much sure that there is a big market who is just looking for content, but they are not looking at it only from the mainstream media. They are looking elsewhere. And so in January, I started doing live shows. So mid of January, I started my first show. And till now, if you ask me, maybe around 175 to 200 shows, live shows I've done.
It's amazing. Yeah, you have been a content machine. You have put out a lot of content, and it all has that level of value and quality. And I'm just so impressed with what you've built so quickly with your show. it deserves so much credit. And that's why I want to make sure that I brought you here to the show so that other Binge Factor listeners can really take a listen to your show, get exposed to it, and see this level that you're bringing to the podcasting world. And AJ, I can't thank you enough for being on my show, for bringing this level of energy to the podcasting industry, and for helping to raise the tide for everyone.
Thank you, Tracy. I would say I did not come to podcasting even though it is like you want something, but then it's podcasting which pulled me in. Actually, Alex has a great role to play. His company has a big role to play. It was like you had something, you have a boat, but you don't have the river.
That's
so how
right.
do you use it? Actually, that's why I keep on saying openly to Alex, it means so much to me. And several things I'm not able to tell even on this podcast or even to maybe, but actually it was divine providence that once I suddenly saw somebody writing about Podmatch, and then I saw that and I just thought, why not try it out? And then I saw it is something like it is, you are thinking about one bottle of water. Here there is several rivers flowing. And this
right.
will be your and people want to be there. So why to open your savings account, savings and use it when there is a full river flowing? So and That's people right. want to be guests and speak out so many things. The only thing is, a lot of you have to make sure that the type of guests you are getting, just do a bit of research on them, that you are bringing the true people, not advertising for people who may not be as true as they want to sound, because there is no checks and balances there.
So true, AJ. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I am so glad and look forward to building a bigger relationship with you and staying in touch over time.
Thank you. As I said, you are a friend now. So at any point in time you want me for wherever I can utilize my expertise, I'm always available. But even as I said, for the larger podcasting world, I'm available. And I'm not talking about money. When we'll talk about money, we'll talk about, obviously, I have to also take care of my bread and butter. But when I talk of value, at that time, I forget about money.
That's right. You do. Thank you so much, AJ.
You've been listening to the Binge Factor podcast. For more information on podcasting and videocasting success tips and tactics, please go to thebingefactor.com. And be sure to listen to our other show for podcasters called Feed Your Brand. If you'd like to be interviewed on this show, as well as featured in Tracy's column, please go to thebingefactor.com/guest and apply.